Hello. Well, actually, who am I? That's a big question. I won't be too mysterious because I have two names really. It's either Marie or it's Mary. I changed it and I changed it mid career. You don't do that. But I did because I was out of it all, away with it, no more career for me. One of those, I did that about 4 times actually. Gave it all up and was serious, went into serious living. But, so I'm Mary, really, like legally, I suppose. My mother got to call me Marie, even, and my husband. Some of my friends still insist on Mary, but you know, I answer to anyone. Anyway, that's Barton is the last name. I know that's a long introduction, and I have a long life. I have 87 years of life. So my experiences go way, way back. Yeah, way back, so far back I can't remember. But I'd better remember because this is the job. Okay, so remembering. You see, I wanted to talk about theatre to people who really, really were interested in theatre, because I want to say, don't be. Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. That for some of you youngsters was written by a very famous, infamous character named Noel Coward. Noel Coward, many years ago. And when I was at school, I didn't want to be an actor. I used to do it, but I did it because it was fun. It was really fun to get up and be other people and pretend and be washerwomen in dancing. I loved that. I was never given the points, you know, and the pretty fairies. No, I was the witch, you know, and I loved it. But anyhow, I had a friend who wanted to be an actress. She ended up, though, not as an actress. I think, I can't remember, she went into some sort of merchandising. Anyhow, I was sent to a drama school to study how to teach acting. To teach. Well, I used to have elocution classes and to learn how to speak the Queen's English. It was the King's English for a long while. We used to sing God Save the King when I was young. Had to learn how to switch king to queen. And now we're going back again, right? Anyhow, where was I? Yes, I got to drama school in London, England, and loved it. Oh, wow, did I love it. Except I didn't love the teaching part of it, because I ended up discovering that the teaching part was teaching little boys. The boys were separate from the girls, and I only had the little boys, how to speak properly. And I didn't like that. I'm glad to say I didn't like that. And I thought, if that's teaching, I'm out of it. So I went back to drama school for 2 years as a drama, as an actor. Anyhow, I left there, went straight into summer stock because I was a good student. And then I think I fell apart. That was the first time I kind of gave it up. You leave school, you leave summer theatre, you go back to the big city, and what do? You're a waiter, if you're lucky. So, my mother came and took me home, and after a year I emigrated and came to find my father in Canada, in Toronto. That's how I came here. Because he wrote to my mother and he said, here in Canada they need actors. They need actors. Television was just starting. And so I came with two names. Les Ruby in Toronto, he was an actor in Toronto, and Butch Blake. So I focused on Les Ruby. He told me that an actress he knew, he was a wonderful old guy. Talk about character actor, sort of, 7 chins under him and a warm smile. And he said, I know an actress who needs a roommate. Would you like to start there? And so I shared a room with Nonnie Griffin for a couple of years. Nonnie Griffin at that time was a star, a Canadian star. Radio, TV, and they're starting into film as well. So, but there's no star system in Canada. There still isn't. So her picture was on the front of the Radio Times. There was no TV Times at that time, but Radio Times. And she needed a buddy. She was wonderful. She was charismatic and fun. And through her, I was able to, get in a kind of, my father said to me, it's who you know, not what you know. And I never understood what he was talking about. But I soon learned that there's a lot of truth in that. And, but you had to prove yourself to who you knew. And so, it was through Nonnie I got my first, it was not through Nonnie I got my first job, but that's a long story. My second job, I did get through her, and that was at the Red Barn Theatre. Nonnie rescued me, I should say, to put it clearly. She rescued me from Prudham's Garden Centre Theatre, where I was painting the outside of the theatre as my job as assistant stage manager. That was my very first job, from working all winter at Consumers Gas Company. That was my first bread and butter job in Canada. Oh, and that's another story, how I got that. But anyway, back to theatre. Yes, Nonnie introduced me to, or suggested to Andrew Allen, because Andrew Allen was a very good friend of Nonnie's. Because Nonnie was very good also on radio, and of course, Andrew Allen was the man, the international man, actually, in radio drama, particularly radio drama, which was fabulous in those days, Canadian radio drama. And, but he was the very first artistic director of this new venture that was starting in Niagara on the lake, and they were calling it the Shore Festival. And so the very first year, they were going to open with You Never Can Tell by George Bernard Shaw. And yes, I got the role of one of the young twins in the show. The other twin was a guy. His name was Roy Wordsworth. You might have heard of Roy Wordsworth. Yes, wink, 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 wink. So I had the very first line. I didn't realize this. Sean Mulcahy pointed it out. He was also in the cast. One day he said, well, of course, you had the very first line of the Shore Festival. And I thought, well, yeah, I did too. I was in the dentist chair, and he was the dentist, you see, so he knew this. Anyhow, where am I? The Shore Festival. 1963 we are now. I disappeared in the States for 3 years. I gave up theater. What did they do down there? I went down there for religious reasons. I joined a lay women's Roman Catholic movement, and they put me to work directing plays. Wouldn't you know it? You trust those Catholics, honest to God. Anyhow, 3 years later, I'm back again. Spent my summers in New York, making a bit of money to pay for all that. Anyhow, that was that was just on the phones and things like that in New York. That's all that was. After the opening, which of course was a big success, they all enjoyed it, and we did too. The lights suddenly went out. One night, this is a memory I have of those very early days, because our lights, we were then in the courthouse theater. That meant that there were dungeons, prison dungeons down underneath us, and bats in the belfry again, like at the Red Barn, and no air conditioning, anything like that. It was very, and we were all very suspect in the neighborhood. You know, there was a bank that was opposite us, and the curtains came up halfway up the windows. And when we would take a break outside and kibitz around outside in the sun, you could see these eyes come up over the windows, you know, over the curtains of the windows, watching us, you know. So, oh my God, who are they? Who are they? So I think it's changed a bit since then. Anyhow, the lights one night went out because we were all the lighting was attached to the whole town, and anyhow, we got out candles, and the show had to go on. And people love this, audiences love this kind of thing. And this went on for, it must have been over an hour before the lights came up. And we were doing fine for a while. And Sean Mulcahy, paying the dentist, he said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What's the matter? The phone's supposed to be ringing. The phone. And then he said suddenly, very loudly, ring, 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 ring. And that was, and the audience, oh, yes, of course, of course. And the show went on. That's how it was in the beginning, of course. It's all changed very much now. So I returned to the show a couple of years later, in '65, and then did The Millionaires, and then, well, before that was Pygmalion. And that was that was slightly more professional, but the show festival was still struggling at that time, but still fun, and it was a holiday. Theatre, it's very difficult to say, put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington, because when you're on the stage as a profession, making your money from it, it's something else. No longer, well, all play. You know it's not all play, you know, even when you're playing. The best playing, you got to stop and work at it to make the play better. But the work's fun. But the business of theatre. See, I didn't know much then about television. I learned about it in Canada, and film. I learned about both of those. My very first teacher was going to a commercial and being told by the casting officer, I guess, who was, you know, auditioning. No, stop acting, is what he said to me. Just be yourself. Well, that got me. I have no idea what he was talking about. And you see, we didn't have any training in being normal, being just ourselves. Because my training was in London, England, was a bit like the old Victorian style, really, to be honest. And I had to learn quite a bit in North America about Stanislavski, for instance, and that Russian approach to realism, and which I found very beautiful. And of course, it's that the film really needs. However, I have a face that has to express itself, and I remember a bus conductor when I was a kid saying, "Oh, cheer up, might never happen." And I thought, I wasn't feeling unhappy. I was just being me. What did he mean? And someone else told me that I had a face that was either one way or the other. Either happy, but then that's theatre, isn't it? Comedy, tragedy. So I was made for it, I decided. But don't put your daughter on the stage. Be careful, be careful. Only if she absolutely insists. and then you can't stop her. I was very good at the classics, you see, because the classics was big and broad and exaggerated. And I was very, very fortunate and lucky the way I got into Stratford. I got into Stratford in 70, it was around 70, 71, 72. And because someone had dropped out, you see, and I got a call to go to audition. But you see, it wasn't a general audition. I was very lucky. And I had to audition for the director of this particular, it was As You Like It. And the director was a guy by the name of Bill Hutt, William Hutt. So my boyfriend drove me to Stratford, and I thought, I remembered a Butch Blake. I wonder if I might meet this. I wonder if this Butch Blake might be working there. Anyway, I didn't see him that day because I was just there and off again. But when I was there, they said, go into the theater and Mr. Hutt will join you there. I wasn't gaga at the Mr. Hutt. I was used to being called, you know, actors were Mr. and actresses were Miss or Madame or Dame. I went into the theater, and there's the stage, the Stratford apron stage. And he's sitting there near the aisle, and I walked down to him, and he said, would you please be kind enough to do a piece, give me a little piece on the stage? Have you ever been on the stage, alone on the stage of Stratford? I was out there, and I remember thinking to myself, this may never, ever happen again. This is a chance in a lifetime, so just let it rip. Well, I guess it must have worked, because I got the job. And William Hutt had thought Shakespeare was not quite perfect, and there's a certain character in, I think it's the first scene, who is mentioned, but the mistress of Sir Frederick, the names I can't remember, who is supposed to have said this. Well, he writes this speech, William Hutt writes this speech for her, and that was my my speech. Anyhow, I was there for the season, which had its ups and downs, but the classes were to die for. I learned thousands and thousands of dollars worth of classes I attended. I mean, it was, and I learned from it, and I was given a couple of grants afterwards to study with Loy Coots, and voice, the approach to voice that they used at Stratford for the actors, and encouraged the actors to study this, and most did, and I learned to teach it. But at the end of the season, I had bought a car, but I didn't, or at least I'd ordered it, but I didn't know whether I could afford to buy it, because I didn't know if I was on the list to go on the Russian tour. So the car, I couldn't afford it, you see, unless I knew that I was going on this this tour because they paid very well, and they fed you and housed you, etc. on this tour that we heard about, Russian tour. So I went to King was his name, I think, who was organizing this, and told him my situation, and I said, I need to know if I'm on the list so I can buy my car. Yes, I think you're on the list. So I bought my car, and I was able to drive back and forth to Toronto and back again and take friends, but I didn't have a license. So the problem was, though, that I hadn't really learned how to drive, and I got stuck in Stratford in a ditch. That wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was I got myself out of the ditch, as one does, but with the handbrake on. The car was a bit of a mess. However, I was off on tour to Russia. So I got it somehow to Toronto and left it on a street there. You could do that in those days. And went off, said goodbye to my boyfriend at the time. And my God, what a chance in a lifetime. The Russian tour. Well, it was Europe and Russia. We went to Holland. We performed in Holland. We performed in Denmark to royalty. And in the audience, unbeknownst to me, was a classmate of mine from drama school who'd married a Dane and came backstage. I mean, how can you imagine? Invited me back in a couple of days to dinner in Denmark, and picked me up and brought me back to the hotel, and for 3 days. I think Denmark was our very first performances were in Denmark. I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. Insomnia. I mean, of course you understand it. Who wants to sleep? So I finally, anyway, but what I wanted to tell you about was we played to royalty, and we were told at the curtain call, where everyone lines up, that you always bow to the royal box first. Then, of course, to the general public who are applauding. So the curtain comes down, the curtain goes up, we all line up, and we take, I called him me, oh, we're in Denmark, we're on the Russian tour, completely forgetting everyone else turns about, and I in the wrong direction. I was not invited to, shake hands or be introduced. The lineup, I can't understand why, but it was quite fabulous. Our dressing room was in a castle. Anyhow, then we played in what did I say? We were in Denmark. We were in Holland. Played in Holland. And then we went to Poland. I fell in love with Poland. And in Poland, they thought, okay, we're doing King Lear. Bill Hutt plays King Lear. Well, I mean, everyone has their taste, In Poland, Mr. Hutt was not their taste in King Lear. They were not the old school in Poland. They were very, very avant-garde. And one evening, they brought the sheets out over the tables in a long, long line of, these were this was in Warsaw. We played in Warsaw and Krakow. And in Warsaw, they held a feast for us. Canadian, they loved Canadian, wow. And Western, right, Western, near the U.S., you know, almost United States. And laid out the tables. And the critics sat with us, and they brought homemade food. It was just fabulous, you know, and homemade wine. It was a fabulous evening. And the critics sat with us. And one of the cast of Stratford dared to say, to one of the critics, what did you really think? Because you see, the papers came out, and the critics, the critics wrote their criticisms in Polish, of course, because it was in Poland. And so it didn't come down to us until they were translated. Well, they were not good reviews. But we didn't know that, so we're trying to find out. How did we do? How did we do? And someone asked the critic sitting there beside him, tell us, all ears. And he said, well, let me put it this way. Next you're off to Russia. They're gonna love you in Russia.